Have you ever walked into a room expecting to clean it and found something that would change your entire life forever? Have you ever had to make a split-second decision that would determine not just your future, but someone else's survival? Today, I'm going to tell you the incredible true story of Amara Williams, a 29-year-old hotel maid working exhausting double shifts at the luxurious Grandview Palazzo Hotel in Chicago, who entered the penthouse suite on what should have been a routine cleaning call and discovered Dante Moretti, one of the most powerful and feared Italian Mafia bosses in the city, collapsed on the floor and actively dying from a sophisticated poison that was shutting down his respiratory system. The moment she touched his pulse and realized he was still barely alive, hanging by a thread between life and death, she made a split-second decision that would thrust her into a dangerous world of organized crime, deadly betrayal, international intrigue, and unexpected passion that would transform both their lives completely. What happened next involves life-or-death medical choices, a determined assassin with diplomatic immunity who won't stop until his mission is complete, dangerous meetings with rival crime families, and a love story that proves sometimes saving someone's life means they'll spend the rest of theirs protecting yours. This is a story about courage in the face of impossible odds, about compassion that refuses to look away from suffering, about transformation that seems impossible until someone believes enough to make it real. So buckle up, because this story will leave you questioning whether some encounters are pure coincidence or carefully orchestrated fate, whether redemption is possible for anyone, and whether love can truly conquer even the darkest circumstances. Amara Williams pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway of the 42nd floor at exactly 3:15 in the afternoon, her shoulders aching from the relentless 10-hour shift she had already worked without a proper break. She had started at 5 o'clock that morning when the city was still dark, cleaning guest rooms on the lower floors where business travelers left messes that suggested they had never learned basic courtesy, and should have gone home at 1 o'clock like her schedule indicated. But Denise had called in sick again for the third time this week, which meant someone had to cover her floors and clean her assigned rooms, and that someone always seemed to be Amara because she never said no, never complained, never made waves that might get her noticed by management or fired for being difficult. At 29 years old, Amara had been working at the Grandview Palazzo for 6 long years, ever since the night she fled from Atlanta to Chicago to escape a relationship that had turned progressively toxic and genuinely dangerous. Arriving in this unfamiliar city with $200 in cash, a duffel bag of hastily packed clothes, and a determination to build a life where no one would ever control her again. She had built a quiet life for herself in this sprawling city, a deliberately safe life that consisted of her demanding work at the hotel, her small studio apartment in Pilsen that was barely 400 square feet but was entirely hers with locks she controlled, Sunday dinners with her elderly neighbor Miss Ruth, who had become the closest thing to family Amara had in Chicago, and the challenging online nursing classes she took 3 nights a week at the public library, slowly working toward the degree that would let her escape the housekeeping department forever and build the professional career she had always dreamed about. The money was terrible at the hotel, barely enough to cover rent and groceries, with nothing left over for emergencies or the expensive textbooks that seemed to cost more every semester, forcing her to buy used editions with highlighted passages and notes from previous students. But it was honest work that paid her bills. And more importantly, it was predictable and safe. No one bothered her about her past. No one asked uncomfortable questions about where she came from, or why she flinched involuntarily when men raised their voices suddenly. No one looked too closely at the careful walls she had built around her private life. She cleaned rooms efficiently, collected her paycheck every 2 weeks without fail, and maintained the careful invisibility that had kept her safe and anonymous for 6 years, exactly the way she needed it to be. Today had been especially exhausting because the hotel was hosting some kind of corporate conference, which meant 200 businessmen who apparently didn't know how to aim for trash cans or hang up towels. Amara had cleaned 23 rooms so far, each one a disaster of minibar wrappers, damp towels on every surface, and bathroom counters that looked like hurricanes had swept through them. She checked her phone for the cleaning app notification. Penthouse Suite 4201. Urgent cleaning requested. Checkout scheduled for 5 o'clock. That was odd. The penthouse suites rarely requested midday cleaning, especially urgent ones. Guests who paid $1,500 a night generally didn't want housekeeping interrupting their privacy. But the app said urgent, which meant someone important had complained, which meant Amara needed to get up there immediately. She took the service elevator to the 42nd floor, the highest level of the hotel, where only 4 penthouse suites occupied the entire floor, each one larger than most people's apartments and featuring floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views of Lake Michigan and the Chicago skyline. The hallway was carpeted in thick burgundy pile that muffled the sound of her cartwheels. Original artwork hung on cream-colored walls. Everything up here whispered money and exclusivity. Suite 4201 was at the end of the hall, around a corner that created a private alcove for maximum discretion. Amara knocked 3 times, the standard housekeeping announcement. "Housekeeping," she called out, her voice professional but not too loud. No answer. She waited the required 30 seconds, then knocked again. "Housekeeping, you requested cleaning." Still nothing. Amara pulled out her master keycard, the one that could open any room in the hotel but was supposed to be used only after following proper procedure. 3 knocks, 2 announcements, 30-second waits. She had done everything correctly. She swiped the card and pushed open the heavy door, immediately noticing how dark it was inside. The blackout curtains were drawn, and only thin lines of afternoon sunlight leaked through where the fabric didn't quite meet the window frames. The suite's air conditioning was blasting at what felt like 50 degrees, making the room ice cold. "Hello? Housekeeping. I'm coming in to clean." Amara flipped on the entryway light, illuminating a clearing, short hallway that opened into the main living area. Everything looked pristine. No scattered clothes, no room service trays, no signs that anyone had been staying here at all. Maybe the urgent cleaning request had been a mistake. She pulled her cart inside and let the door close behind her, already mentally calculating how quickly she could dust and vacuum a room that barely needed attention. That's when she saw him. A man lay on the floor near the bedroom doorway, collapsed in a position that immediately told Amara something was very wrong, something potentially life-threatening. He was face down with his body twisted awkwardly, one arm stretched out desperately toward the phone on the side table as if he had been trying to reach it when he fell, his fingers still extended toward that last hope of help. He wore expensive suit pants that looked custom-tailored and a white dress shirt that was partially unbuttoned, revealing a muscular chest. His shoes kicked off nearby as if he had been trying to get comfortable before whatever happened to him struck. For one terrible second that seemed to stretch into eternity, Amara thought he was dead, that she was staring at a corpse in a luxury hotel room, and her first panicked instinct was to back out of the room immediately and pretend she had never seen anything, never entered this suite, never encountered this situation, because getting involved with a dead body in a luxury hotel would mean police questions and media attention and the kind of scrutiny she absolutely could not afford given her past. But then she saw his back move, just barely, the shallow rise and fall of someone still breathing but barely. Someone hanging on to life by the thinnest thread, and her nursing student instincts that she had worked so hard to develop overrode her survival instincts that told her to run away. She dropped to her knees beside him with practiced efficiency, her hands already moving through the assessment protocol she had practiced hundreds of times in simulation labs, checking for a pulse at his neck with 2 fingers pressed firmly against his carotid artery. It was there, faint and irregular and much too slow, but unmistakably present, the rhythm stuttering like a car engine about to die. His skin was clammy and cold despite the frigid air conditioning that was making the room feel like a freezer, and there was a thin sheen of sweat across his forehead and neck that suggested his body was fighting something, some internal battle it was losing. She rolled him carefully onto his back using proper technique to protect his spine, supporting his head and neck, and got her first real look at his face. He was probably in his late 30s, somewhere between 35 and 40, with sharp aristocratic features that suggested Italian heritage, olive skin that had a grayish undertone that alarmed her, and dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that would have been attractive under different circumstances. Even unconscious and clearly in severe medical distress, he was strikingly handsome in that dangerous way that Amara had learned through bitter experience to be very wary of. All strong masculine jaw and sensual mouth, and the kind of perfect bone structure that belonged on movie screens or fashion runways. His dress shirt was expensive Italian silk, probably worth more than Amara made in a full month of double shifts, and on his left wrist was a watch that she recognized as a Patek Philippe, the kind of timepiece that could have paid her rent for an entire year with money left over. But what caught her professional attention and triggered alarm bells in her medical training was his color, or rather his lack of healthy color. His lips had a distinctly faint blue tinge that was spreading toward purple, and his fingernails showed unmistakable signs of cyanosis, the bluish discoloration that indicated severe oxygen deprivation and inadequate circulation. His pupils, when she carefully lifted one eyelid with her thumb while holding a small penlight from her cleaning supplies, were constricted to dangerous pinpoints no larger than the head of a pin, and his breathing was terrifyingly shallow, maybe only 4 or 5 breaths per minute, when it should have been 12 to 20. Amara's mind raced through the systematic differential diagnoses she had learned in her advanced pathophysiology class just last semester. Pinpoint pupils combined with severe respiratory depression, cyanosis from oxygen deprivation, altered consciousness bordering on complete unresponsiveness, cold, clammy skin suggesting shock. This wasn't presenting like a heart attack or myocardial infarction, which would show different symptoms including crushing chest pain and different pupil responses. This wasn't a stroke or cerebrovascular accident, which would show facial drooping, arm weakness, and speech difficulties. This was poisoning, specifically targeted poisoning. The presentation looked superficially like opioid overdose with the pinpoint pupils and respiratory depression, though something about the muscle rigidity she noticed in his limbs when she tested his reflexes felt slightly off, didn't quite fit the classic opioid toxidrome pattern she had memorized for her pharmacology exam. There was an unusual stiffness in his muscles, a strange tension that suggested neuromuscular involvement beyond simple opioid receptor activation. This was something more exotic, more dangerous, more deliberately chosen to kill. She grabbed her phone to call 911, but before she could dial, the man's hand shot out with surprising speed for someone barely conscious and gripped her wrist. His eyes opened, and Amara found herself staring into dark brown eyes that were clouded with pain, but unmistakably alert and intelligent. "No," he rasped, his voice rough and barely audible. "No hospital, no police. You're dying," Amara said bluntly, trying to pull her wrist free. His grip, even weakened, was like iron. "You need a hospital right now." "Can't." He struggled to focus on her face. "They'll kill me there. Already tried to kill me here." "Who tried to kill you?" "What happened?" His eyes were starting to lose focus again, his grip on her wrist loosening as consciousness slipped away. "Poisoned," he managed. "Don't know what. Please, no hospital. I'll pay. Whatever you want. Just help me." Then his hand fell away and his eyes rolled back, and Amara watched his breathing become even more shallow, each breath coming slower than the last. She had maybe minutes before respiratory failure became irreversible, and she was making a decision that would either save this stranger's life or ruin her own. Every bit of common sense told her to call 911 and walk away, but 6 years of nursing classes had taught her that when someone was dying in front of you, protocol became secondary to saving a life. And something about the genuine terror she had seen in his eyes when he said they would kill him at the hospital made her believe he was telling the truth. Amara looked at the man dying on the floor and made her choice. She grabbed her phone and called the one person who might be able to help, Miss Ruth, her neighbor who had been a nurse for 40 years before retiring and who had been mentoring Amara through her nursing program. "Miss Ruth, I need your help. It's an emergency." She described the symptoms rapidly while keeping her fingers on the man's pulse, which was getting weaker. Miss Ruth's response was immediate and professional. "Sounds like poisoning, probably something that targets the respiratory system. You need to support his breathing first. Check his mouth for any remaining substance. If his airway is clear, start rescue breathing. 2 breaths every 5 seconds. I'm looking up potential antidotes, but without knowing the specific poison, treatment is going to be guesswork." Amara checked the man's mouth, finding nothing obvious, then tilted his head back to open his airway and began rescue breathing, counting between each breath, watching his chest rise and fall with the air she forced into his lungs. His pulse remained weak but steady under her fingers. Minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Amara's back ached from bending over him, her lips were numb from breathing into his mouth, and her arms trembled from supporting his weight. But slowly, infinitesimally, his color began to improve. The blue tinge to his lips faded slightly. His breathing, while still shallow, became less labored. "His pupils are pinpoint," Amara told Miss Ruth, her voice breathless from the rescue breathing. "And he's showing signs of respiratory depression, but there's also this strange muscle rigidity in his limbs that doesn't quite fit opioid poisoning. Could be a neurotoxin," Miss Ruth said thoughtfully. "Something that paralyzes the respiratory muscles. There's a plant-based poison called aconite that presents with those symptoms. Also certain synthetic compounds used by people who want deaths to look natural. If it's aconite, he needs activated charcoal to absorb remaining toxin, and he needs respiratory support until his body can metabolize what's already in his system. Where am I supposed to get activated charcoal? The hotel probably has it in their first aid stations for accidental poisoning incidents. It's usually near the restaurant kitchens. But Amara, honey, if this man was deliberately poisoned, you're walking into something dangerous. Maybe you should call 911 after all." Amara looked at the man's face, at the vulnerability of unconsciousness, at the way his expensive clothes and obvious wealth hadn't protected him from whoever wanted him dead. He said they'll kill him at the hospital. I think he meant it. Then you better hurry with that activated charcoal, because he's not out of danger yet. And Amara, once he wakes up and realizes you saved his life, he's going to want to know who you are. You ready for that? No, Amara thought, but she was committed now. She left the man on the floor, propped in the recovery position with a pillow under his head, and ran through the hotel's service corridors to the main kitchen, where she knew the industrial first aid station was located. The kitchen staff barely looked up as she rummaged through medical supplies, finding the bottle of activated charcoal suspension that restaurants kept on hand for accidental food poisoning. She ran back to Suite 4201, her heart pounding, expecting to find him dead, but he was still breathing, still unconscious but alive. Amara carefully administered the activated charcoal, supporting his head and making sure he could swallow the thick black liquid without choking, then resumed rescue breathing and pulse monitoring. 20 minutes later, his breathing finally stabilized. His pulse became stronger, more regular. His color continued to improve, the cyanosis fading until his lips were pink again and his nail beds showed healthy circulation. His eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding his expression before awareness returned. He stared at Amara for a long moment, clearly trying to process who she was and what had happened. Then he looked down at his charcoal-stained shirt and lips, and understanding dawned in his eyes. "You saved my life," he said, his voice still rough but much stronger than before. "You're a doctor?" "Nursing student. And hotel maid, obviously." Amara gestured to her uniform. "You were dying. Respiratory failure from what looks like some kind of neurotoxin. Probably aconite based on your symptoms. Do you remember what you ate or drank?" He closed his eyes, thinking. "Coffee. From room service. About 2 hours ago, I started feeling strange about 30 minutes after drinking it. Numbness in my extremities, difficulty breathing, heart palpitations. I tried to reach the phone to call for help, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only lie there and feel myself dying." His eyes opened again, focusing on Amara with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Why didn't you call an ambulance? You told me not to. Said they would kill you at the hospital. And you believed me? You were dying and terrified." "I believed something." She sat back on her heels, suddenly aware that she was kneeling on the floor of a luxury suite next to a strange man who had been poisoned by someone dangerous enough to have access to exotic neurotoxins. "Who are you? And who wants you dead badly enough to poison your room service coffee?" "My name is Dante Moretti." He watched her face carefully, clearly expecting recognition. Amara kept her expression neutral, even though that name sent chills down her spine. Everyone in Chicago knew who Dante Moretti was, or at least knew the rumors. Head of the Moretti family, one of the oldest and most powerful organized crime families in the city. The man controlled everything from construction unions to shipping docks to half the restaurants in Little Italy. He was dangerous, powerful, and exactly the kind of person Amara had spent 6 years avoiding. "I don't know who you are," she lied, already mentally calculating her exit strategy. "But you're stable now, your breathing is normal, and you should probably call your own doctor. I need to get back to work." She started to stand, but Dante's hand caught her wrist again, this time his grip strong and commanding. "Don't go, please." That last word, soft and almost vulnerable, made Amara pause. "You know who I am, even if you're pretending you don't. I can see it in your eyes, and you're right to be afraid because my world is dangerous and violent and people die in it every day. But someone just tried to kill me in a hotel where I'm supposed to be safe, which means someone in my organization betrayed me. Until I figure out who, I can't trust my own security, my own doctors, my own family. But you, a stranger who had no reason to, helped me in every reason to walk away. You saved my life." His dark eyes held hers. "I need someone I can trust, and right now, that's you. Will you help me? I cleaned your room and gave you first aid. I helped you, but whatever else you need, I can't be involved. I have a life that doesn't include organized crime and assassination attempts." Dante sat up slowly, testing his strength, and Amara noticed that despite having been at death's door 20 minutes ago, he moved with the kind of controlled power that came from years of physical training. "What's your name?" Amara Williams." "Amara." He said it carefully, as if memorizing it. "You're studying to be a nurse?" "Yes. Online program. I work here to pay for classes." "How far along are you in your program?" 2 years in. 2 more to go before I can take the licensing exam. She didn't like where this was going. Why? Because I need a private nurse, someone who can stay with me while I recover and figure out who tried to kill me. Someone who understands medical care but isn't part of the hospital system where my enemies could find me. Someone who has no connections to my world and therefore no reason to betray me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wallet that probably cost more than Amara's monthly rent. I'll pay you $20,000 a week. Cash. No questions asked. You take care of me until I'm fully recovered, and help me determine if there are any lasting effects from the poisoning. After that, you can go back to your life with enough money to finish your nursing degree debt-free and still have plenty left over. The amount of money made Amara's head spin. $20,000 a week. She made barely $30,000 a year at the hotel, and that was working double shifts. In a month, she could make more than she usually made in 3 years. She could finish her degree without worrying about tuition, pay off the credit card debt from her escape from Atlanta, save enough for a real security deposit on a better apartment. But she would be spending that month in the company of a Mafia boss who had just survived an assassination attempt, surrounded by the kind of danger she had sworn to avoid. Why would you trust me with this? Amara asked. You don't know anything about me. I could be working for whoever poisoned you. If you were working for them, I'd be dead right now, instead of sitting here negotiating with you. They would have sent you to confirm the kill, not to save me. He counted out a stack of $100 bills from his wallet, $10,000 in cash, and held it out to her. This is advance payment for the first half of this week. Call it a signing bonus. Take it, help me get somewhere safe, and decide then whether you want to continue. If you decide to walk away after today, you keep the money. No questions asked. But I think you'll stay because you're the kind of person who finishes what they start. Amara looked at the money. More cash than she had ever held in her life, and then looked at Dante Moretti's face, at the intelligence in his eyes and the stubborn determination in his jaw. He was offering her a way out of years of financial struggle. He was also offering her a front-row seat to potential violence and danger. But when she thought about going back to her double shifts at the hotel, cleaning up after strangers for minimum wage, falling asleep over textbooks at midnight because she was too exhausted to study properly, the decision became easier. I'll help you today, she said, taking the money with hands that trembled slightly. Get you somewhere safe. Make sure you're stable. After that, we'll see. Dante smiled, and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. That's all I ask. Now help me up. We need to leave before whoever poisoned me sends someone to confirm I'm dead. Amara helped Dante stand, supporting his weight as his legs steadied beneath him. He was taller than she had realized, probably 6'3" to her 5'7", and despite being poisoned and nearly dying, he moved with a natural grace that spoke of complete physical control. You can't leave the hotel looking like that, Amara said, eyeing his charcoal-stained shirt and disheveled appearance. You look like you've been in a fight. We need to clean you up first. Smart thinking. There's a shower in the bedroom. Help me there. Then find me clean clothes from the closet. 5 minutes later, Dante was showering while Amara located a black t-shirt and jeans from his luggage, along with a leather jacket and different shoes. She also found a 9mm handgun in a shoulder holster hidden in his suitcase, which she carefully did not touch but couldn't help staring at. The reality of who she was helping suddenly very concrete and frightening. When Dante emerged from the bathroom, his hair damp and his color fully restored, he looked completely different from the dying man she had found. 30 minutes ago, he looked powerful and alert and dangerous, exactly like someone who ran a criminal organization should look. He dressed quickly, strapped on the shoulder holster under his jacket, and turned to Amara. How do we leave without being noticed? If someone poisoned my room service, they're probably watching the exits. Amara thought about the hotel's layout, about all the service corridors and back exits she used every day. There's a service elevator that goes directly to the loading dock. The kitchen staff uses it for deliveries. If we go that way, we can avoid the main lobby entirely. Where are we going? I have a safe house in Lincoln Park. It's registered under a shell company that's impossible to trace back to me. We'll be secure there while I figure out my next move. They left the suite together, Amara pushing her cleaning cart as if she was just finishing her rounds, Dante walking beside her with his hands in his jacket pockets, looking every inch the wealthy hotel guest heading out for the evening. Anyone who saw them would think nothing of it, just a maid and a guest sharing an elevator. Except this guest had nearly been murdered, and this maid was now an accessory to hiding that fact from the authorities. They made it to the loading dock without incident. Dante led Amara to a black Audi sedan that was parked in a corner spot, shielded from security cameras by a delivery truck. "This is yours?" Amara asked. "One of several. I keep vehicles in various locations for situations exactly like this." "Get in." Amara climbed into the passenger seat, the leather interior smelling expensive and new. Dante drove carefully through Chicago's afternoon traffic, checking his mirrors constantly, taking random turns that made no sense until Amara realized he was watching for anyone following them. 20 minutes later, they pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a luxury townhouse in one of Chicago's most exclusive neighborhoods. The safe house turned out to be a 3-story brownstone that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, modern furniture that probably cost more than cars, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered views of a private garden. "This is a safe house?" Amara asked, looking around in disbelief. "Your safe house is nicer than anywhere I've ever lived. It needs to blend into the neighborhood," Dante explained, locking the door behind them and immediately checking his phone, which had been buzzing constantly during the drive. "A rundown property would attract attention. This looks like any other wealthy person's home, which makes it perfect for hiding in plain sight." He scrolled through his messages, his expression darkening. "What's wrong?" Amara asked. 12 missed calls from my underboss Marco. 8 from my sister Valentina. 6 from my business attorney. Everyone knows something's wrong because I missed a meeting this afternoon." He looked up at Amara. "The poison was timed perfectly. I was supposed to be at a sit-down with the Calabrese family at 3 o'clock to negotiate territory agreements. When I didn't show up, it made me look weak or afraid. Meanwhile, whoever poisoned me expected me to be dead by the time anyone found me. Probably not until the hotel's evening shift tried to clean my room. By then, the poison would have metabolized enough that it might have looked like natural causes, especially if they bribed the right medical examiner. So someone wanted you dead and wanted it to happen in a way that would hurt your reputation and business interests at the same time." "Exactly. Which means this wasn't an impulsive attack. This was planned by someone who understands my schedule, my routines, and the political dynamics of the Chicago families." Dante sat down heavily on the leather couch, and Amara could see exhaustion finally catching up to him. "The poison is probably still affecting you," she said, switching into nurse mode. "You need rest and hydration." "When was the last time you ate anything besides poisoned coffee?" "Breakfast at 6 this morning. Oatmeal and fruit at a restaurant I trust, prepared by people I trust." "Do you trust the grocery delivery service that stocks this safe house?" "It's delivered to the management company that handles multiple properties. No one knows which unit I actually use." "Then I'm making you something to eat, something bland that won't upset your stomach after poisoning. And you're going to rest while I monitor your vital signs to make sure there aren't any delayed effects." She looked around the open-plan living space. "Where's the bedroom?" "You need to lie down." Dante pointed to a hallway. "Second door on the right." "But Amara, I need to make some calls first. I need to let my people know I'm alive and deal with the political fallout from the missed meeting." "You need to not die from delayed toxicity," Amara countered firmly. "Your calls can wait 30 minutes while I check you over properly and make sure you're stable. Come on." To her surprise, Dante stood and followed her down the hallway without argument. The bedroom was just as luxurious as the rest of the house, with a king-sized bed, silk sheets, and abstract art on the walls. Amara pointed to the bed. "Sit. I'm going to check your vital signs properly this time, not in an emergency situation." She found her phone's stopwatch function and checked his pulse, counting carefully. Still slightly elevated but strong and regular. She checked his pupil responses, his reflexes, asked him questions to assess his mental clarity. Everything looked good, much better than it had an hour ago in the hotel room. "You're lucky," she said finally. "Whatever dose of poison you got, it wasn't quite enough to kill you, just enough to incapacitate. Maybe the person preparing your coffee didn't mix it thoroughly, or maybe they got interrupted and couldn't add the full amount. Either way, you're going to be fine, though you'll probably feel weak and shaky for the next day or two while your body finishes processing the toxin. Stay with me while I make my calls," Dante said. "In case something happens, in case the poison isn't finished with me yet." It was a reasonable medical request, so Amara nodded and sat in the armchair near the window while Dante stretched out on the bed and started making phone calls. She listened to him navigate complex conversations with various people, his voice shifting from authoritative to reassuring to cold depending on who he was talking to. He explained the missed meeting as a security situation that he had handled personally, He instructed his underboss Marco to reschedule the Calabrese sit-down and make it clear that Dante Moretti did not miss meetings out of fear. He told his sister Valentina that he was fine and would explain everything later, his tone softening in a way that suggested genuine affection. After the third call, Dante looked over at Amara. "You're very quiet. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about how many lies you just told very convincingly. I'm thinking about what it means that you run an organization where people try to kill you. I'm thinking about whether I'm making a terrible mistake by staying here. Those are all reasonable things to think about. But you're still here, which means some part of you believes this is the right choice, or at least that it's worth the risk." He set his phone aside. "Ask me anything you want to know. I'll answer honestly because you saved my life, and I owe you at least that much. What exactly do you do?" "I know the rumors about the Moretti family, but I want to hear it from you." Dante was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I run a business empire that includes legitimate enterprises like restaurants, construction companies, and real estate holdings. I also run operations that exist in legal gray areas like gambling, protection services, and financial mediation. Some people call what I do organized crime. I call it providing services that people want in ways that traditional businesses can't or won't offer. We hurt people, yes, but only people who break agreements or threaten our operations. We're not trafficking drugs to school children or forcing women into prostitution. We're businessmen who operate outside the legal system because the legal system is corrupt and ineffective." That sounds like rationalization. It is, but it's also true that my family has been in Chicago for 4 generations. And in that time, we've employed thousands of people, supported hundreds of families, and protected communities that the police had abandoned. Is that enough to justify the violence? Probably not. But it's the world I was born into, and I'm trying to run it better than my father did, with less bloodshed and more legitimate business. Amara absorbed this, trying to reconcile the man who had just explained his criminal empire with the man who had been vulnerable and dying on a hotel room floor. "Who do you think poisoned you?" "I have 3 suspects. Marco, my underboss, who has always been ambitious and might see my death as an opportunity to take over. Luca Torino, head of a rival family, who has been pushing into our territory and would benefit from destabilizing our organization. Or my cousin Stefano, who believes he should have inherited leadership instead of me and has never forgiven me for it. What will you do when you figure out which one it is?" "What needs to be done?" The coldness in his voice sent shivers down Amara's spine. "But that's my problem, not yours. Your job is just to keep me alive while I figure it out." Over the next 3 days, Amara fell into a strange routine of caring for Dante while he orchestrated his organization from the safe house, making calls, reviewing documents that were delivered by trusted couriers, and conducting meetings via encrypted video calls. She monitored his recovery, which was progressing well, the weakness and shakiness fading as his body cleared the remaining poison. She cooked simple meals that wouldn't upset his healing digestive system. She researched aconite poisoning to understand potential long-term effects and made sure he was drinking enough water to help his kidneys flush out toxins. And despite herself, despite knowing how dangerous he was and how complicated this situation was, she found herself talking to him during the long hours when he was resting and couldn't work. They talked about everything: her childhood in Atlanta, growing up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet, her escape from an abusive boyfriend 6 years ago, though she kept the details vague because remembering still hurt, her dreams of becoming a nurse, of helping people, of building a stable life that was entirely her own. Dante told her about growing up as the heir to a criminal empire, always knowing his path was predetermined, always aware that his last name came with expectations and dangers. He told her about his father's death 3 years ago, how he had inherited leadership at 34, and immediately faced challenges from rivals who saw him as too young, too modern, too willing to negotiate instead of fight. He told her about his sister Valentina, who had escaped the family business by becoming a successful artist, and how he envied her freedom even as he took pride in her accomplishments. "Do you ever wish you could leave?" Amara asked on the 3rd evening, as they ate dinner together at the kitchen island, pasta carbonara that Amara had made from ingredients delivered that afternoon. "All the time," Dante admitted, "but leaving would mean abandoning hundreds of people who depend on the Moretti family for their livelihoods. It would mean betraying my father's legacy, and it would mean admitting that I'm not strong enough to handle the responsibility I was born to carry. That's not weakness. That's being human. In my world, being human is weakness. Showing vulnerability, admitting fear, asking for help, those things get you killed." He looked at Amara intently. Which is why what you did in that hotel room was so extraordinary. You saw me at my weakest, when I was helpless and dying, and instead of taking advantage of that or walking away, you helped me. That kind of compassion is rare anywhere, but especially in the world I live in. The moment felt heavy with something Amara couldn't quite name. An intimacy that went beyond nurse and patient, beyond helper and helped. She stood up quickly, suddenly nervous. I should check your blood pressure before bed. You've been on your feet a lot today, and I want to make sure there's no delayed cardiac stress. Dante let her change the subject, let her turn their connection back into something professional and safe, but his eyes followed her as she moved around the kitchen, cleaning up dinner dishes, and Amara felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. That night, lying in the guest bedroom down the hall from Dante's room, Amara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the money he was paying her, about the way it was accumulating far faster than she had ever imagined possible. She kept thinking about how easy it had become to talk to him, how comfortable their silences were, how natural it felt to care for him. She kept thinking about the danger she was in, about the fact that whoever had poisoned Dante might come after anyone close to him, and she was currently the person closest to him, the only one who knew where he was and what had happened. She should leave, take the money she had already earned and disappear before things got more complicated. But she didn't. She stayed. On the fourth day, Dante's cousin Stefano came to the safe house. Amara heard the doorbell ring at 10 in the morning and watched through the security camera feed as Dante studied the face on the screen before unlocking the door. Stefano Moretti was in his early 40s, handsome in a harder way than Dante, with suspicious eyes and a mouth set in a perpetual scowl. He swept into the house like he owned it, his gaze immediately finding Amara in the kitchen. "Who's this?" he demanded. "My private nurse," Dante replied smoothly. "I've been dealing with a health issue. Nothing serious, but I wanted professional monitoring. Since when do you have health issues? And since when do you trust strangers enough to bring them to a safe house?" Stefano moved closer to Amara, studying her with open hostility. "Who are you? What family do you work for?" "I don't work for any family," Amara said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm a nursing student. I'm here to do a job, nothing more." "Stefano, enough," Dante said, his voice hardening. "She's not involved in our business. Leave her alone. You're getting soft, cousin. Trusting some random woman because she has medical training? What happened to the Dante, who trusted no one? I learned to evaluate people based on their actions, not their surnames. Amara saved my life. She's earned my trust." Stefano's eyes narrowed. "Saved your life? From what?" This was clearly a test. Dante had told Amara that he hadn't revealed the poisoning attempt to anyone in his organization yet because he didn't know who to trust. Now his cousin, one of his 3 main suspects, was fishing for information. "Food poisoning," Dante said casually. "Bad shellfish from a restaurant I won't be visiting again. I was very sick. Could have been serious if not for proper medical intervention. That's all." Stefano didn't look like he believed it, but he couldn't prove otherwise. "We need to talk. Privately. About the Calabrese situation and the missed meeting that's made you look weak. There's an office upstairs. We'll talk there. Amara, take a break. Go for a walk in the garden. Get some fresh air." It was a clear dismissal, and Amara was happy to take it. She grabbed a jacket and stepped out into the small private garden behind the townhouse, breathing in cool autumn air and trying to calm her racing heart. She had just been confronted by someone who might be a murderer, and the only thing keeping her safe was Dante's protection. 15 minutes later, she heard shouting from inside the house. Men's voices raised in anger, the kind of argument that sounded like it might turn physical. Amara crept back inside through the garden door, listening to Stefano and Dante arguing in the office upstairs. "You're making us look weak," Stefano was saying. "The Calabrese family thinks they can push us around because you won't respond with force. The Torinos are moving into our territory because you're too busy negotiating to actually defend what's ours. Father would never have tolerated this. Father ran this organization through fear and violence, and it nearly destroyed us." Dante shot back. "We were at war with 3 families at once when he died. Our profit margins were down 40% because we were spending everything on enforcers and weapons and buying off police to ignore the bodies. I've spent 3 years building legitimate businesses and negotiating truces that actually benefit us long-term. I'm not going back to the old ways. The old ways kept us strong. Your new ways make us vulnerable. And when you fall because you're too weak to do what needs to be done, don't expect me to clean up the mess." Stefano stormed down the stairs, his face flushed with anger. He saw Amara standing in the hallway and sneered. "Enjoy playing house with my cousin while you can, nurse, because this won't last. Nothing in his life lasts. After Stefano left, slamming the front door hard enough to make the expensive artwork on the walls rattle, Dante came downstairs looking absolutely exhausted, the stress of the tense confrontation evident in every line of his body, in the tension visible in his shoulders and the tightness around his eyes and mouth. "I'm sorry you had to hear that argument," he said quietly, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "My family is incredibly complicated. Generations of resentment and competition and power struggles that never seem to resolve." "Is he always like that with you?" Amara asked, still processing the hostility she had witnessed, the genuine anger and contempt in Stefano's voice. "He's been like that since we were children, growing up together in the same neighborhood, running through the same streets." Stefano was supposed to be next in line for leadership of the family according to age and tradition until my father decided I was a better choice because I was more strategic, less impulsive, better at navigating politics. He's never forgiven me for it, never accepted that my father chose me over him, and he fights everything I try to do, every reform I attempt to implement, every modernization I propose, because he wants me to fail so spectacularly that the family, elders will turn to him instead and give him the power he believes he deserves. Dante sat down heavily on the leather couch, and Amara could see how much the poisoning was still affecting him, how much energy it cost him to maintain his authority and project strength when his body was still recovering. "Could he have poisoned you?" Amara asked directly, because she needed to understand the full scope of the danger surrounding them. Dante rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture of weariness that made him seem more human and less like the dangerous criminal boss everyone said he was. "I honestly don't know anymore. He certainly has the motive, both personal resentment and political ambition. He has the opportunity because he knows my routines, knows where I stay, knows how to access my life. But poisoning isn't really his style, isn't consistent with his personality. Stefano believes in direct confrontation, in proving his strength through visible violence and intimidation. He wants people to know when he's behind something, wants credit for his actions. Poison is a coward's weapon in his worldview, subtle and sneaky and anonymous. And whatever else he is, whatever faults he has, my cousin isn't a coward. He's many terrible things, but not that. Then who? If not him, who had the skill and access and motive to poison you with something as exotic as aconite? Dante looked at Amara with his dark, penetrating eyes, the intelligence in them evident even through his exhaustion. "I'm starting to think it was Luca Torino after all, the head of the rival family. He has the most to gain strategically from my death, because he's been trying to expand into our traditional territory for years, pushing boundaries, testing our resolve. And he has connections to international criminal organizations that might have access to exotic poisons like aconite, connections we don't have. The Torinos have always preferred indirect methods, subtle approaches, the kind of strategy that lets them maintain plausible deniability while still achieving their goals." Dante looked at Amara seriously. "Which means I need to arrange a meeting with him. A very public meeting where he can't try anything without exposing himself. And I need you there with me." "What? No. I'm your nurse, not your bodyguard or your assistant. I can't go to meetings with Mafia families. I need someone there who knows what aconite poisoning looks like, someone who can watch Luca and his people for any signs that they know I survived. And I need you there because your presence says I'm confident enough to bring my nurse to a business meeting, which projects strength rather than the vulnerability of bringing extra security. You're using me as a prop. I'm asking you to help me identify the person who tried to kill me so I can stop them from trying again. And yes, your presence serves a strategic purpose, but it also keeps you safer than leaving you here alone where you'd be vulnerable if Stefano decides you know too much." Amara wanted to refuse, wanted to say this was beyond what she had agreed to. But Dante was right about one thing. She was already involved now, already a potential target. Better to be at his side where he could protect her than alone and exposed. "Fine," she said, "but I want double my rate for this week. 40,000 for putting me in a room with people who commit murders for a living." Dante smiled. "Done. The meeting is tomorrow night at Osteria Romana, a neutral restaurant that both families respect. Wear something nice. We need to look like we belong there." The next evening, Amara found herself standing in front of the full-length mirror in the guest bedroom, barely recognizing herself. Dante had arranged for a designer dress to be delivered, a midnight blue silk sheath that clung to her curves and fell to just above her knees, elegant without being ostentatious. With it came shoes, jewelry, and a small clutch purse. She had spent an hour on her hair and makeup, transforming from hotel maid to someone who looked like she belonged at an expensive Italian restaurant with a mafia boss. When she came downstairs, Dante was waiting in the living room, and the way his eyes widened when he saw her made Amara's stomach flutter in a way she firmly told herself was inappropriate. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "This meeting will be straightforward," Dante explained as they drove to the restaurant. "Luca Torino and I will discuss territory boundaries and profit sharing from various operations. We'll pretend everything is cordial. The whole time, I'll be watching to see if he reacts to seeing me alive when he expected me to be dead. You watch his associates, the men sitting at nearby tables, the staff who serve us. Anyone who looks surprised or alarmed by my presence could be the person who administered the poison." Osteria Romana was located in a historic building in River North, the kind of place where entrees cost $100 and reservations were impossible to get unless you knew the owner. Dante clearly knew the owner, because they were ushered immediately to a private dining room in the back, away from other patrons. Luca Torino was already there, a man in his 50s with silver hair and calculating eyes. Two of his associates flanked him, both large men with the unmistakable bulk of professional enforcers. "Dante," Luca said, standing to shake hands. "Good to see you. We were concerned when you missed the Calabrese meeting. I had personal business to attend to, nothing that affected our operations." Dante gestured to Amara. "This is Amara Williams, my private nurse. She's been helping me with a health matter." Luca's eyes flickered over Amara with professional assessment, looking for threat, finding none. "A nurse. How progressive of you, Dante. Most men in our position prefer bodyguards. Most men in our position make predictable choices. I prefer to be less predictable." They sat down, and waiters immediately appeared with wine and appetizers. The conversation turned to business, discussing percentages and territories and operations with a casualness that belied the millions of dollars being negotiated. Amara watched everything while pretending to study her phone, cataloging reactions and behaviors. Luca showed no surprise at seeing Dante alive. His associates seemed bored, more interested in their food than the meeting. The waitstaff were efficient and professional, showing no unusual interest in their table. Either Luca was an exceptional actor, or he genuinely hadn't been expecting Dante to be dead. Halfway through the meal, Amara excused herself to use the restroom. She was washing her hands when one of the female servers came in, a young Italian woman with dark hair and nervous eyes. The woman started to leave, then turned back, studying Amara. "You're with Mr. Moretti," she said. Not quite a question. "I am. Is there a problem? I need to tell you something, but you have to promise you won't say it came from me. I have children. I can't afford to lose this job or worse." Amara's pulse quickened. "I promise. What is it?" 4 days ago, a man came to the restaurant during my shift. He said he worked for Mr. Moretti and needed a special favor. He asked me which hotels Mr. Moretti used when he stayed in Chicago. Said he needed to send a surprise gift to his room. I thought it was strange, but he showed me identification that said he was with the Moretti organization, and he paid me $500 just to tell him where Mr. Moretti usually stayed. I told him about the Grandview Palazzo Hotel, about how Mr. Moretti always requests the same penthouse suite when he's in town. The server's hands twisted together anxiously. But then I heard rumors that something happened at that hotel, that Mr. Moretti disappeared from a meeting and people were worried, and I started thinking maybe that man wasn't really trying to send a gift. Maybe I helped someone do something bad. What did this man look like? Tall, maybe 50 years old, with gray in his hair. He had an accent, but not Italian, something else. Eastern European, maybe Russian. Amara's mind raced. None of Dante's suspects matched that description. Did he give you a name? No, but he left in a black car with diplomatic plates. I noticed because my uncle used to work at the consulate, and he told me those plates mean someone has diplomatic immunity, can't be prosecuted for crimes. Thank you for telling me. You did the right thing. I'll make sure Mr. Moretti knows you were trying to help. Amara went back to the dining room, her mind spinning with this new information. She caught Dante's eye and gave a small nod toward the exit. He understood immediately. "Gentlemen, I apologize, but we need to leave. A personal matter requires my attention." In the car, Amara told Dante everything the server had said. His expression darkened as he listened. "Russian diplomat with gray hair. That's Viktor Kozlov, attaché to the Russian consulate. He's not a real diplomat. He's SVR, Russian Foreign Intelligence, using diplomatic cover to run operations in the United States. Why would Russian intelligence want you dead? I've been refusing to work with them. They want to use our shipping operations to move contraband, want to use our financial networks to launder money. I told them no, because working with Russian intelligence would bring federal attention we can't afford. Kozlov has been pressuring me for months, getting more aggressive when I kept refusing. Dante drove with controlled intensity, checking his mirrors constantly. This changes everything. If Kozlov used someone to poison me and that person might have diplomatic immunity, I can't retaliate directly without causing an international incident. But I also can't let this go because it shows weakness. What are you going to do? I need proof first. Confirmation that Kozlov was definitely behind the poisoning. Then I need to figure out how to respond in a way that sends the right message without triggering a war with Russian intelligence. He glanced at Amara. And I need to make sure you're safe because if Kozlov learns you saved me and helped me figure out his involvement, he'll come after you too. Fear coiled in Amara's stomach. I should leave. Take what you've paid me and disappear. If you leave now, Kozlov's people will find you within a week. Your best protection is staying close to me where my organization can keep you safe. Is this what the rest of my life looks like now? Hiding from Russian intelligence? Being protected by the Mafia? I just wanted to finish nursing school and live a quiet life. I know, and I'm sorry. But you saved my life, and that connected us whether we wanted it or not. I will keep you safe, Amara. I promise you that. Over the next week, while Dante worked to gather proof of Kozlov's involvement, Amara found herself sinking deeper into his world. She met his sister Valentina, a beautiful woman in her 30s with kind eyes and Dante's same determined jaw, who hugged Amara like they were old friends and thanked her profusely for saving her brother's life. She met Marco, the underboss who turned out to be genuinely loyal despite Dante's suspicions, and who treated Amara with careful respect once he understood how important she was to Dante's recovery. She attended more meetings, more dinners, always at Dante's side, always watching and learning the complicated dynamics of his world. And she found herself falling for him despite every single logical reason not to, despite all her careful walls and learned caution. It was the accumulated weight of small moments that gradually wore down her resistance and got to her heart. The way Dante made her coffee exactly how she liked it every single morning without being asked, remembering that she preferred it, strong and black with just a tiny bit of honey, not sugar. The way he asked genuinely interested questions about her online nursing classes and actually listened with full attention when she explained complicated pharmacology concepts and pathophysiology mechanisms, never making her feel stupid or boring even when she got excited about topics most people found tedious. The way he made absolutely sure she ate properly and got adequate sleep despite the chaos of his own demanding schedule, turning his legendary protective instincts onto her care the same way she had turned her nursing skills onto his care, creating this mutual caregiving that felt unprecedented in her life. The way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention, when he believed she was focused on something else, with an intensity in his eyes that made her breath catch in her throat and her heart race. The way he defended her to his family and associates, making it clear that anyone who disrespected her would answer to him directly. The way he seemed to genuinely value her opinions on his business decisions, asking her perspective on ethical dilemmas and actually listening to her advice even when it challenged his instincts. The way he opened doors for her and pulled out chairs and treated her like she mattered, like she was precious, in ways that felt completely different from her ex-boyfriend's controlling behavior, because Dante's protectiveness came with respect for her autonomy. She could tell the difference between being controlled and being cherished, between being possessed and being valued. And with Dante, she felt safe in ways she had never felt safe before, safe enough to start lowering her defensive walls and let him see the real her underneath all the careful armor she had built over 6 years of hiding. 2 weeks after the poisoning, Dante's people finally found proof. Security footage from the Grandview Palazzo Hotel showing a man matching Kozlov's description meeting with a room service worker in the employee parking garage at 2 a.m, 3 days before Dante's poisoning. Financial records showing a payment of $10,000 from a shell company linked to the Russian consulate to that same room service worker. And most damningly, customs records showing a small package from Russia arriving at the consulate 2 weeks before the poisoning, declared as herbal supplements, but likely containing aconite. It's enough, Dante said, showing Amara the evidence. Enough to know for certain it was Kozlov, but not enough to prove it in court or to anyone outside my organization. So, what happens now? Now I send a message. Not direct retaliation, because that would cause exactly the international incident Kozlov wants to use as an excuse to move against me officially. But I can make his operations in Chicago impossible, shut down the businesses he uses for money laundering, make sure his corrupt police contacts suddenly become too expensive to maintain, create enough problems that his superiors in Moscow start asking why his assignment is costing so much money with so little return, force him to transfer somewhere else or risk being recalled in disgrace. That sounds complicated. Welcome to the politics of organized crime. Everything is complicated, nothing is simple, and the real skill is knowing how to hurt your enemies without giving them ammunition to hurt you back. Dante looked at Amara seriously. I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Are you staying because you feel obligated? Because you think you owe me? Or because you actually want to be here? Amara took a deep breath. At first it was about the money. Then it was about finishing what I started. But now, she met his eyes. Now it's because I care about you, which is probably the most foolish thing I could admit, considering who you are and what you do. But there it is. I care about you, and I want to stay, and I'm terrified about what that means. Dante crossed the room in 2 strides, his hands cupping her face with a gentleness that contrasted with his dangerous reputation. I've been trying not to feel this, trying to keep this professional because you deserve better than getting involved with someone like me. But I'm selfish enough to be grateful you saved my life, selfish enough to want you to stay, selfish enough to hope that caring about me doesn't become something you regret. He kissed her, and Amara felt herself melt into it, all her careful walls crumbling. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me. Not as my nurse, not as someone I'm protecting. Stay with me because you want to. I'll pay off your student loans. I'll make sure you can finish your degree at the best nursing school in Chicago. I'll keep you safe from Kozlov and anyone else who might threaten you. Just stay. What if your world destroys me? What if I can't handle the violence and danger and constant fear? Then I'll help you leave safely, with enough money to start over somewhere far away from Chicago. But I hope you'll give us a chance first because I think we could be extraordinary together. You make me want to be better, to build something beyond just criminal enterprises. And I hope I make you feel safe enough to trust again after whatever happened in Atlanta that you still won't tell me about. Amara thought about the boyfriend she had fled from 6 years ago, the man who had hit her and controlled her and made her believe she was worthless. She thought about how Dante's protectiveness felt completely different, felt like freedom instead of captivity because he protected her while respecting her autonomy. She thought about the money accumulating in her bank account, enough now to be genuinely life-changing. And she thought about how it felt to be held by him, to be looked at like she mattered, to be chosen by felt, someone who could have anyone. I'll stay, she whispered, but I need you to promise me something. Promise that if I ever want to leave, you'll let me go. No threats, no control, no possessiveness. I've been trapped before, and I can't do that again. I promise. You're free to leave whenever you want, but I'm going to work very hard to make sure you never want to. Over the following months, Amara built a life with Dante that was stranger and more wonderful than anything she could have imagined. She finished her nursing degree at Northwestern University, where Dante had arranged her acceptance with a generous donation, though her grades were good enough that she would have earned her spot anyway. She passed her licensing exam on the first try, and began working at a free clinic in a neighborhood where the Moretti family's protection meant she could treat patients without worrying about gang violence or drug dealers interfering. She moved into Dante's primary residence, a penthouse, apartment with views of Lake Michigan and security that would have impressed the Secret Service. She met his extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins who ran various parts of the organization, and slowly earned their acceptance as someone important to Dante. And she learned to navigate the complicated politics of his world, learning when to speak and when to stay silent, learning who could be trusted and who required careful watching. The nightmares came sometimes. Dreams where she was back in Atlanta with her ex-boyfriend, or dreams where Dante was dying on a hotel floor and she couldn't save him. But Dante was always there when she woke up, gasping, holding her until the fear passed, reminding her that she was safe now. Viktor Kozlov was transferred to the Russian embassy in Bangladesh 6 months after the poisoning attempt, his Chicago operations successfully dismantled by Dante's coordinated campaign against his networks. Before leaving, he sent a message through intermediaries acknowledging that Dante Moretti was more formidable than he had assessed, and that future dealings would be conducted with appropriate respect. It was as close to an apology as men like Kozlov offered, and Dante accepted it as the closure it represented. 1 year after finding Dante poisoned on a hotel room floor, Amara stood in the garden of the Lincoln Park safe house, the same garden where she had hidden while Stefano and Dante argued. Wearing a white dress and holding a bouquet of lilies, Dante stood across from her in an impeccably tailored suit, his sister Valentina beside him as his best person, and they spoke vows in front of 50 people who represented both Dante's world and the new world they were building together. "You saved my life," Dante said, his voice carrying across the garden. "And then you changed it. You made me believe I could be more than just my family's legacy, more than just a criminal empire. You made me want to build something better, something that could survive in daylight instead of hiding in shadows. I love you for your compassion, your strength, your refusal to accept that my world couldn't be transformed. I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that saving me was the best decision you ever made." Amara looked at him, this dangerous man who had shown her gentleness, this criminal who had given her freedom, this unlikely love that had started with a desperate plea in a hotel room. "You were dying when I found you, and saving you felt like the simplest choice in the world. But staying with you, loving you, building this life with you, that was the brave choice. And I'd make it again every single day. I love you not despite your world, but because of how hard you're working to change it. I love you for seeing value in a hotel maid covered in charcoal stains and offering her a chance at something extraordinary. I promise to spend the rest of my life being your partner in transformation, your nurse when you're hurt, your conscience when you're tempted toward darkness, and your greatest champion always." They married surrounded by people from both the legitimate and criminal worlds, a symbol of the bridge they were trying to build between Dante's past and their future. And when they kissed to seal their vows, Amara thought about how a single moment of choosing to help instead of walking away had given her everything she never knew she wanted: a career she loved, financial security, a family that protected her, and a love that had survived poison, danger, Russian intelligence operatives, and all the complications of merging two very different worlds. That evening, at the reception held at Osteria Romana, the same restaurant where Amara had learned the truth about who poisoned Dante, she found herself dancing with her new husband, his arms secure around her, his voice soft in her ear. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About marrying a criminal? About the danger this life will always carry? About giving up the quiet life you wanted?" Amara thought about it honestly, because Dante deserved honesty. "No regrets. Just gratitude that I was working a double shift on the day you were poisoned. Gratitude that I chose nursing instead of any other career. Gratitude that when I had the choice between walking away and helping, I chose to help. I'm grateful too, for bad shellfish that wasn't actually shellfish, for your compassion and skill, for your willingness to see past what I do to who I am, and for the fact that you're stubborn enough to have stayed even when staying was dangerous." They danced in silence for a moment before Dante spoke again. "I'm still working to make the Moretti family businesses more legitimate. It'll take years, maybe decades, but I'm committed to it. For you, for any children we might have, for a future where my name isn't synonymous with organized crime. I know. And I'll be beside you for all of it, helping however I can. That's what partners do." And she was. Over the years that followed, Amara became known in Chicago not as a Mafia wife but as a skilled nurse practitioner who ran a network of free clinics in underserved neighborhoods, funded quietly by Moretti family resources, but operated independently and ethically. She became a bridge between Dante's world and the communities he wanted to serve instead of control, helping to transform his organization from one based on fear and violence to one focused on community support and legitimate enterprise. The transition wasn't always smooth. There were challenges from old guard members who resented the changes, who called Dante soft and weak for abandoning the traditional ways that had sustained the family for generations. There were heated meetings where men who had been loyal to his father walked away in disgust, refusing to be part of what they saw as the destruction of everything they had built. There were moments of genuine danger when rivals tested Dante's resolve, pushing into territory to see if the newly reformed Morettis would fight back with the old violence, or continue their path toward legitimacy. There were attempts on Dante's life by those who saw his reforms as weakness to be exploited. And there were times when Amara questioned whether their mission was even possible, whether a criminal empire built on generations of violence and fear could truly transform into something honorable and legitimate, or whether they were just putting a fresh coat of paint on something fundamentally corrupt. But through every challenge, every setback, every moment of doubt, they remained committed to their vision and to each other. When old guard members left, Dante recruited younger people who shared his vision for a different kind of organization, people who had business degrees and understood modern financial systems, and believed that power could come from community support rather than intimidation. When rivals tested their boundaries, Dante responded with calculated force that sent clear messages about consequences, without escalating into the kind of prolonged wars that had destroyed so many families. When assassination attempts happened, And they did happen twice more in the first 3 years. The security Dante had built around himself and Amara proved strong enough to thwart them. And when Amara struggled with doubt, Dante reminded her of every life they had changed for the better, every family they had helped stabilize, every neighborhood they had improved. The clinics Amara established became models for community health care, treating tens of thousands of patients who had no other access to medical care. The job training programs Dante funded, designed with Amara's input to focus on real skills and real opportunities, placed hundreds of people in sustainable careers every year. The affordable housing developments they built together created homes for families who had been priced out of Chicago's gentrifying neighborhoods. The scholarship programs they created sent dozens of students to college who never would have had that chance otherwise. And slowly, remarkably, measurably, the communities that the Moretti family touched began to transform in ways that went far beyond anything Dante's father had ever imagined or cared about. But through it all, they remained partners. Dante's protectiveness balanced by Amara's independence, her compassion balanced by his pragmatism, his dangerous world balanced by her ethical grounding, and their love, which had started with a poisoned man on a hotel room floor and a hotel maid brave enough to save him, grew stronger with every challenge they faced together, deepening through shared struggles and mutual support in ways that the easy early romance could never have predicted. The respect they had for each other was evident in how they made decisions together. Dante never made major moves without consulting Amara, valuing her perspective on how choices would affect the communities they served and the ethical implications of various strategies. Amara never pursued major clinic expansions or program initiatives without ensuring they aligned with Dante's broader vision for the organization and wouldn't create conflicts with his other operations. They had learned to communicate in that deep way that longtime partners develop, where a single glance could convey volumes, where they could finish each other's thoughts, where they understood each other's fears and dreams and motivations with the kind of intimacy that only comes from genuine vulnerability and trust. They had their disagreements, of course. Amara sometimes pushed for changes that Dante felt were too fast, too risky, would expose them to dangers she didn't fully appreciate despite years in his world. Dante sometimes fell back into old patterns of making unilateral decisions, of trying to protect Amara by keeping her in the dark about certain operations, forgetting that she was his partner and deserved to know the truth even when it was uncomfortable. But they had learned how to fight fairly, how to disagree without being cruel, how to find compromises that honored both their perspectives. And they had learned, most importantly, that love wasn't about never having conflict, but about resolving conflict in ways that strengthened rather than weakened their bond. 5 years into their marriage, Amara discovered she was pregnant, and the news filled them both with joy and terror in equal measure. Joy because they both wanted children, had talked about starting a family, had dreamed about what kind of parents they could be. Terror because bringing a child into Dante's world felt like the ultimate vulnerability, creating a target that enemies could use against them, forcing them to confront the reality that their choices would affect not just themselves but an innocent life they were responsible for protecting. They spent long nights talking about whether they should bring a baby into their complicated situation, whether it was fair to the child, whether they could keep a son or daughter safe in a world that still contained so much danger despite all their reforms. In the end, they decided that fear couldn't dictate their lives, that their child would have advantages and protection that most children could never dream of, and that they would work even harder to complete the transformation of the Moretti organization so that their son or daughter could grow up in a family that was respected for its contributions, rather than feared for its violence. 10 years after that day, Amara stood in the newest clinic she had opened, cutting the ribbon at a facility that would serve thousands of families in a neighborhood that had been neglected for generations. Dante stood beside her, his hand on the small of her back, his face showing genuine pride. The clinic bore the name, the Second Chance Medical Center, in honor of the second chance both of them had been given when their worlds collided. Behind them stood nurses, doctors, community organizers, and yes, some members of Dante's organization who had found legitimate work through the family's transformation. It was everything they had been working toward, a symbol of change, a testament to the possibility of redemption, and proof that even the most unlikely love stories could create something beautiful and lasting. That night, back in their penthouse apartment, Dante pulled Amara close on their balcony overlooking the city. "Do you remember what you said when I first asked you to stay? You said you needed to know you could leave if you wanted to." "I remember. Do you want to? After 10 years of this life, after seeing the reality behind the romance, do you ever want to leave?" Amara looked out at Chicago's skyline, at the city where she had fled from one dangerous man and found safety with another, where she had gone from minimum-wage hotel maid to successful nurse practitioner, where she had helped transform a criminal empire into something that could exist in daylight. No, because this isn't just your life anymore. It's our life. We built it together, and I'm not walking away from what we've created. I'm exactly where I want to be. Dante kissed her forehead. Good. Because I plan to spend the next 50 years proving that a hotel maid finding a poisoned mafia boss was the luckiest thing that ever happened to both of us. And it was. That's the story of Amara Williams and Dante Moretti. Proof that sometimes the most dangerous situations lead to the safest loves, that compassion can transform even criminal empires, and that the choice to help a dying stranger can change two lives forever. Their story reminds us that love isn't always convenient or logical, that redemption is possible for anyone willing to work for it, and that sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back. If this story moved you and you want to hear more tales of unexpected protection, dangerous romance, and love that transforms lives, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We share new stories every week about real people who discovered that the most extraordinary relationships often begin in the most unlikely circumstances. What did you think of Amara and Dante's story? Have you ever made a split-second decision that changed your entire life? Would you have saved him? Or called the police? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories resonate with your own experiences. Remember, sometimes the choice between walking away and staying is the choice between safety and transformation. And sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is exactly the person who will protect you for the rest of your life. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.